Once more, it's time for the oral history broadcast, and today we're interviewing a resident of Marshall County, lives out, I guess you'd say, in the Scale Oak Valley neighborhood, George Bloomingburg. As a matter of fact, George is my brother-in-law, and we've been meaning to get him for quite a while. Thanks for coming, George.
You're welcome, Ray.
Were you born in Marshall County, George?
No, I was born Benton Route 2, but it was in Graves County.
That's down toward Simpsonia.
Right,
Yeah.
just inside the Graves County line, though. About a mile or two before you get to Simpsonia, across the Graves County line there.
Now, your father was...
Esri Bloomingburg, and my mother was Lucy Frizzell, daughter of Isaac and Miranda Frizzell. That lived, at the home place there, just inside the Graves County line.
Now, you had, a couple of brothers?
Two brothers, Jim and Bill. Bill was 4 months old when my mother died, and of course I was about 3-year-old, just past 3. And we lived then with my grandmother at the close to where I live now, the old home place.
Now, that's your grandmother Bloomingburg.
Grandmother Bloomingburg, right?
Yeah.
Yes. My grandpa was when he died. Dad was about 12 years old, 10 or 12 years old. And of course, as the older children grew up and married off, Dad, of course, was kind of left at home to help take care of her. Then after Mom died, of course, we lived with my grandmother there.
Now, later, I believe, what was it, 29, maybe he married Ruth Hyde.
Right. Yeah, about in 1929, we had, of course, moved to Benton. Dad was working in the Benton post office at the time, and we had moved to Benton and was living in what was then Cole's Addition.
Now, Cole's Addition, was that on the highway toward Hardin? Or?
No, it was the old Mayfield Road at that time.
The old Mayfield
Right.
Road, yeah.
I believe it was Walnut Street now, and so we lived there till after they married. We moved to the last house on West 12th Street, to the hill. A fellow by the name of Pace owned it. It was more recently owned by Bernie Brown. That was the last house out that road. And they had already surveyed what is now the Mayfield Highway, and the right-of-way came right close to the house. But we had moved out to Church Grove, and about in 29 or 30, I forgot what year it was. And but I had already started school at Benton. I finished up that school year, and then the next year I went to school at Church Grove.
All right, so you got a good country one-room school education,
Right.
like many of us, and like
Right.
I did, for example, and that puts you on a solid foundation of reading, writing, arithmetic, and so forth.
That's right. We had all 8 grades. Of course, when I went from the 4th grade to the 6th grade, and then the next year I took the 5th grade material, and then the next year I went to the 8th grade, and then the next year I took 7th grade. The teachers, they taught the even numbers one year, the odd numbers the next year.
Yeah, somewhere in the 20s, I don't know the year exactly, they decided 8 grades was a little too heavy a load. So by alternating, as you say, they were doing that, of course, when I was in school. In fact, I'm a little older than you, I guess, but that cut them down to 6,
Right.
in effect. It made it a little awkward. In fact, it kept me in school a year longer than I would have been, because my mother wouldn't let me leave the 4th and go to the 6th grade.
I made it very well.
You hit on the right bounce.
Well, I went 4th to 6th and then 5th to 8th, but I made my grades.
Yeah.
And the last, we moved then down to Oak Valley, and between Christmas and New Year's of 1936, just before the 1937 flood that came in January.
Uh-huh.
And I went about a month at Oak Valley School, and James Robert Barnes was a teacher at that time, and of course the water broke the levee at just north of Benton here on what is now 641, and he couldn't get through there for a few days. And he came and gave us a high school test,
Mm-hmm.
and so we passed 5 hours from Oak Valley School, and we came to Benton then the next year. And
That put you then into Benton High School.
Benton High School, right.
Mhm.
And the first year, we rode with 4 boys and 2 girls in a 1926 Model T with the side curtains.
Yeah, I remember that Model T very well. I had a 27, and the 26s and 7s were virtually identical. The one that I had was I guess a deluxe model. I'm not sure, but anyway, it had wire wheels on it. Now, some of the 26s had wooden wheels.
I'm not sure what this had wooden wheels or not. I don't
But
remember now. But
I do remember one great improvement they had. They had the gas tank over the motor instead of under the front seat, so you didn't have to back up hills.
right.
Oh, it is perfect. The fuel pump never gave any trouble at all.
Gravity feed.
Yeah.
Gravity feed.
Yeah. So you rode to school in a Model T. Well, things have changed a lot.
Oh, they sure have. Well, of course, the next year then, another boy and myself, 2 others and myself, we walked, hitchhiked
Mm-hmm.
for 2 years, and we only had to walk all the way, I think, one day. There'd be somebody come along, a cattle truck or something come along, we'd get to ride to school.
Mhm.
And then the last year, of course, we had a little better transportation.
Yeah.
But,
You were in the class of what, 41?
I graduated in 1941.
Mhm.
And then in spring of 41, in the fall of course, the war was getting, let's see, December 41. I started they had an NYA school over at Mayfield. And sometime that fall or early winter, I started the school over at Mayfield. And so they sent us then up to Connecticut and worked in a airplane factory in Connecticut
Mhm.
in 1942. And then in 1943, I was drafted into the Army, of course. And
Now, did you go into one of those special education programs at first?
no, I took my basic training in the Air Force, and they sent me to Lincoln, Nebraska, to an airplane mechanic school. And while there, I took some tests, and I got into it was ASTP, Army Specialized Training Program. And I got 32 hours at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was stationed there, of course, I met the girl that is now my wife. We
So that's the way you met Juanita.
Right.
You were in college at Washington University.
right, yeah. So I met her first weekend I was there. Went to church, and they were having a dinner, farewell dinner for somebody that was moving away. And of course, she saw that I got something to eat. And then
That made an impression on you.
Right. So we've been together after a year or two there. We finally got married in 1945 after I got back to the States.
All right, now, when were you sent overseas? You did go overseas.
I was real lucky while I was in the Army. I was in that airplane mechanic school, and of course, it's about 9 months in this college, And while I was there, I got several passes to come home on the weekends. And then they did away with that program in the spring of '44. And I went down to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri in the infantry and took basic training. And they took us out to California to do amphibious training to go to the South Pacific. And but I was in the 3rd platoon, and they took the 2nd platoon out on the beach and literally cooked some of the boys with sunburn.
Yeah.
And so that slowed the program down, and that's why I say I was lucky. I wasn't in the first group. And so then they sent me to as a replacement to Fort Smith, Arkansas, and then I wound up with the 106th Infantry Division, and went overseas with the 106th Division, and we got on the front just a few days before the Battle of the Bulge.
Well, I started to say in about the time you arrived, the Germans were making their last big push.
Right.
And it came awfully close to being successful there.
They stretched their supply line out so far, and the snow and the wet ground was such condition that they slowed down. That helped a whole lot.
They totally overran several American units, though. I remember one, George Allen Tucker was in and was killed in the Battle of the Bulge. That is a cold, snowy time, wasn't it?
It was. The sun didn't shine for several days. There was a lot of snow. Of course, the Bulge, the battle started on the morning of the 16th, and we were captured on the 19th, and then the sun come out about the 23rd before the sunshine.
And during that period, when everything was, say, socked in, so to speak, the air superiority that the Allies had wasn't really worth anything to
the
them.
planes couldn't fly.
No.
So, like you said, socked in, they couldn't fly. But the British came over on the 23rd, which a day or two before Christmas. Right after we were captured, there was a great number of people captured at the same during that day in 2 or 3 days, and they started marching us down the road. Every time they come by a barn, they'd open the door and get a few more in the group. And about the 2nd or 3rd day, they put us 60 men in a boxcar, and we were in the boxcar then. And I think it was the night of the 23rd of December. A plane, they had air raid sound, and we were sitting on a railroad siding. And so this, some of the boys got a car door open, and just as I got to the car door, a bomb burst on the outside of the yards. And what had happened, they had missed their target, but some of these boys got out in that field, and about 11 of them didn't come back. So that's why I was lucky there again. I just got to the car door, and the bomb burst on the other side.
Actually, then our own planes.
No, it was British. Well, yeah, Allied planes.
Allied
yeah, right.
planes, not an American,
Right.
but on
Allied,
our side.
Right.
And so again, you were fortunate.
Yeah.
Well, now, how long did you? Where did they send you for
Well,
the prisoner of war camp?
The camp was called Stalag 4B. Was the main camp, and we stayed there a few days. We got in there the 29th of December, and stayed till 4 or 5 days, or maybe a week in January. And in the meantime, they gave us a little postcard, and I wrote, I wanted cigarettes and candy and stuff like that to trade with. And so I filled this postcard full of things like that I wanted, and mailed it home. And my folks got that in April. I mailed it in January, and they got it in April. And so they, trying to make arrangements to send me a package. And in the meantime, I just been listed as MIA, missing in action.
Yeah.
But they got the postcard in, and they checked through the Red Cross and to make arrangements to send a package.
That's the first time they really knew you were
Right.
living.
Right. Yeah. But
It wasn't anything like this Hogan's Heroes, I don't
No,
suppose.
no. We had a few boys that tried to escape, but they didn't get very far. But they sent us to Dresden, Germany, to work, and place
That's today in East Germany.
East Germany, right? Yeah. And we were there. We were working on the streets, doing repair work to the streets, and we stayed in it was a place where they kept cattle before they slaughtered them. It was out the edge of town, and so they had a place there where they did, after they slaughtered the cattle, they had cold storage to store their meat, and in that's where they took us for an air raid shelter. If it happened at night, they'd take us into that entrance to the cold storage for protection. And it was kind of an underground, concreted, and so on Valentine Eve, the 13th of February, the Americans came over, no, the British came over at night, and they literally burned the oxygen out of the air. Of course, when the air raid sounded, well, our commander took us into this shelter, and in just a little while then, fire was everywhere downtown. Of course, by us being out in the edge of the city, we were protected, being in the air raid shelter. And so we stayed there that night, and our building that we had stayed in was burning. And of course, the upstairs, the ground floor of the cold storage was burning, but it was concreted between us and the upstairs. And we stayed there that night. Next day they took us out to work again. And that day then the Americans come over just about noontime. And I saw a book a while back that had a kind of a history type book. It said it was 1,350 bombers and 900 fighters came over that city during that air raid. And they literally flattened the town. And
Dresden was about the
gone.
hardest hit of any city in Germany.
They had a lot of transit people coming through there. They were running from the Russians, and they, of course, never knew accurately how many people were killed, but one history book says 135,000 people. Another one said 200,000, because people were running, they were going to the west. They wanted to get to American lines. And so after that then, we salvaged meat out of that slaughterhouse. And we ate good while we were doing that.
Yeah.
We carried.
Well, I suppose as war prisoners go, the Germans treated you reasonably well.
We had a good camp commander. We had some people that were second or third generation Germans that was captured along the same time I was, and they talked to the commander. We talked. Of course, they had. Some of them had sons that were over here in this country, and we told them how good their son was being treated and all like that. And anytime they could help us get food, they did. Of course, they didn't have that much to get, but anytime they could, they did help us get some food.
There were a lot of shortages, of course,
right.
in the country, and even their civilians were suffering a lot.
They just didn't have it to give. But after this air raid, we would get into somebody's root cellar and help ourselves to potatoes and anything canned products that they had stored. We helped ourselves. Of course, you're risking your life really, because we had one boy that did. He came out with a can of cherries under his coat, and SS troops saw him, and they had a trial and put him for a firing squad. He was sleeping on the floor beside my bunk. Of course, the bunks were wooden boxes, about 4 by 8, and you slept 2 men in a bunk. One's head at the foot, and then one man was the head of one guy's foot, and the other the head of your feet.
Now, Germany surrendered May the 8th, 1945. So you were a prisoner how many months?
About a little over 5 months, not quite 6, from 19th of December till 19th of May. The war, as he said, was over the 8th of May, but they had started to the American lines with us, but they got to a crossroads, and the road was so full of people, they wouldn't let us in line. As I understood it, it was supposed to have been a messenger got to us the day before, but he didn't. And so we didn't get our place in line. They turned us loose, and the next day then we went down another road parallel to the front. And we were in Prague, Czechoslovakia, and finally got on a freight train going towards the western zone. And after, the 18th of May, we ran into the American lines. I forgot now, Pilsen, Czechoslovakia, I believe is the name of the place, where the 1st Division was there. And then, of course, they moved us on back then. Next day, we registered. Re-entry, I believe, is where the certificate read.
Yeah.
We re-registered with the Army again.
You were a happy man at that point, I guess.
Yeah, they moved us back then to Camp Lucky Strike, and I stayed in Camp Lucky Strike then from about the latter half of May till got to the States, I think the 21st of June.
21st of June, you landed in what, New York?
We came into Boston.
Boston.
Just after midnight on the 21st of June.
I was interviewing Dick Farrell, who's chairman of the music department and now retired at Murray State, and he was telling me a story about how when he got back, he said, the first thing I did was to drink a gallon of milk. And he said nearly all the boys were drinking milk.
When we got to Camp Lucky Strike, from being a POW, the Red Cross had a donut and milkshake line, and we had to take our GI canteen cup and go through the line, and then you go back and get to the end of the line again.
Yeah, you just kept going around.
We really got bloated.
Yeah,
but we eat that rich food.
So you were back then in America in June
of 1945.
1945, and then in July they exploded the atomic bomb at Alamogordo, New Mexico.
Right.
In August, actually Japan surrendered before the month was over, and they signed I believe, was it September 2 on board the battleship Missouri?
I forgot what dates it was really, but
everything was over then.
When I got back to the States in 21st of June, I had a 90-day furlough, I believe it was, and then in the meantime they extended it because all the camps were full of POWs. They didn't have any room, so they just let us stay at home till they could get an opening. And then finally wound up, I was supposed to go to Florida, and finally wound up going to Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia. And then I called Juanita, and we got married in Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia, Rossville, Georgia it is, in October 1945. And
well, that was quite an exciting period then for you in the war, and as you say, though, in many ways you were
I was really lucky. I saw some figures just the other day in a bulletin that I get, and 2% of the people that were captured by the Germans died, and about 38 or 40% of those that was captured by the Japanese died or killed.
Oh, me.
So the percentage, I was really lucky percentage-wise.
Those people that were on Corregidor and so on.
Bataan Death March and all those people.
They were just about wiped them out.
The percentages was really in my favor there, and I was, when I went to California to take amphibious training, I was scheduled to go to the South Pacific. I was really lucky to get to be in Germany, really. They were our enemy, but they were better than the Japanese.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
George, we are down to about 8 minutes, and we got a lot of ground to cover, so interesting as those experiences were, let's see if we can get you back. Now, eventually, you graduated from Murray State.
Right. Yes, I started farming, and when I got back to the settle down, we got in the spring of 46. I started farming with my dad, and then I got down in my back. I had a disc problem, and spent a winter in the VA hospital, and part of the time in traction, and part of the time waiting for surgery. And so then, while I was there, the rehab people recommended that instead of farming, that maybe I teach agriculture. So I got lined up then to go to Murray, and I started in at Murray as a sophomore in second year, and I had some credits that was good from Washington University, and so I started in the ag department at Murray, and at that time we had 4 teachers there, and that
Carmen,
was
Houghton.
Carmen, Mr. Houghton, and Robert Hendren, and Arlie Scott.
Yeah.
And Arlie Scott he was captured in Italy. He was a POW in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
So he and I had a little bit in common.
Yeah.
Only he had a lot more POW time than I did. But I did finish at Murray, got a BS in agriculture in 1955. And Mr. A got me arranged for an interview with me with the state. And I started work at Danville, Kentucky in August of 1955.
Now, I visited you there, George. That was one of the most beautiful places I ever saw, right? In the heart of the bluegrass.
It was really nice. I really enjoyed the years that we worked there. I started working in the dairy. Of course, that was early morning, and we'd get through in the afternoon around 4:30 or 5. But then after a couple of years, I got to be farm manager. Now, I started in as assistant farm manager, and then about 6 months, I got to be farm manager then. So I managed the farm. We had 1,500 acres there, and lived there on the farm, and so we had a real nice house to live in, and so we had some good times there, and some hard times too, as far as that goes. But I really enjoyed being there. Like you say, it was a scenic country.
I believe they made a movie, Raintree County, in that neighborhood, didn't they?
Raintree County was made while we were there.
Mm-hmm.
It was they blocked the street that went out our direction, put dirt on it so it looked like it was out in the country.
1860.
Yeah. And so they used this house on the corner there of 3rd and Lexington Avenue
Mm-hmm.
for Raintree County. And of course we went to see the show after they got it on the screen, but it was interesting. A lot of Civil War history around Danville, Harrodsburg.
Mm-hmm.
One of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War was at Perryville,
Yes.
where they have a park there now.
Mm-hmm. Well, you did many other things, but eventually you came back. You were living on part of the old home place, and you became a mail carrier.
Right, yes. We came back to Mayfield in 1971 and started a workshop for handicapped people, and worked there till in 77. Somewhere in there I'd taken a test for a mail carrier, and so I had one of the top 3 grades, and so I started subbing on a rural route. And then after about 4 years, 3 or 4 years, I got on regular as a rural carrier, and then I carried 5 full years, and then I retired from carrying the mail.
And lived happily ever after. That puts you up to the present time.
Put me up to this year. I've had some major surgery this year.
Yeah.
I had a shoulder repair, and then got some pneumonia after that. But
Yeah, you've been in the hospital recently.
This whole summer.
Now, you had a couple of sons.
Yes, we have two boys. One son married a girl from eastern Kentucky, and they live just out of Barberville. He works at a coal mine. They have 3 children, and the other boy lives in Millington, Tennessee, and works in Memphis. And they have a boy will soon be 11-year-old, and a daughter will be 5 in January. And we try to visit them every chance we get.
Yeah.
It's not very often, but we do try to visit them. but the eastern Kentucky it's a long ways from here to Barberville.
Oh, that's right. It's scenic country.
Oh,
but
it sure is.
It's not easy to run over there in a few minutes. It takes all day to drive, I
I
guess.
think somebody said it was 400 miles from Paducah to Harlan, and of course Benton and Barberville's kind of in between, but they're almost as far apart.
Yeah.
'Cause,
Well, George, is there any last
Uh,
thing you'd like to say? We got about a minute left, I guess.
Not especially, really. I wish people would treat their neighbor like they'd like to be treated themselves. Seems like people are getting more selfish, and everybody wants to take the right away anymore. They don't want to give; they want to take.
Yeah.
And
Well, good advice, and thank you very much. That was George Bloomingburg, and I don't know that we said, but I think I said he was my brother-in-law when we came on, but his sister Janie is my wife. And I guess we ought to mention there's a son, Pat, and a daughter, Betty.
Betty, right?
By the-
Yeah, Betty.